What up, perps? Kid Copious, back in effect. Purple State Party, you know what we're doing here. We're repping America, the center, and common sense. And we've been doing this here for 4 years. As of this episode, 4 years. And look what I got myself. Celebrate 4 years. There you go. That's official right there. That's who I am. This is my identity. Started off as a mask because I had other YouTube channels and my family was like, hey, we don't want to be necessarily connected to your craziness out there in your studio. And sadly, 4 years later, I see my family basically feeling the same way I do. That nobody's out there trying to help the common person. They're out there solely to get reelected. And that's a real problem we have here in America. And we're going to look at that today a little bit. You know, the money, the craziness, the way that, like, we're electing people because we think we're doing the right thing. And in reality, we're being led astray. And nobody really typifies that more than Joe Biden, who spoke of unity. We're going to speak of unity because that's what it's about, melding red and blue together to form purple, you know? So, you know, if you've watched these videos in my last 4 years, you know, thank you so much. You know, every video is a big hug. You know, it's a hug to you, and if you're one of the people who view it, it's a hug back to me, and I really appreciate that. And I'm just going to keep on going. And you know, I'm a motor mouth, so at some point I'm just going to have to say, let's get this show popped. All right, we're going to start this with some holy shit, Batman. California's budget deficit is worse than anticipated, and much worse than Newsom projected. Gavin Newsom had said that California is facing a $38 billion shortfall. The nonpartisan Legislative Analysis Office now puts that number closer to $73 billion. Oops. That is catastrophic. That's off by half. That's 100%. Well, okay, let's be fair. Twice 38 would be 76 billion, but holy crap. And this is indicative of the problem we have with these programs and government initiatives, forcing things onto people, worrying about paying out reparations and bullet trains and EV chargers, giving people who aren't even supposed to be in this country health care and giving them financial assistance. This is a state that rewards you for breaking into the country. This is a state that spends more money to give drug addicts supplies than they actually do trying to fix the problem, trying to get these people sober again. And their projections are off by that much. That's how out of touch they are. Now look, either side's extremes would be unpleasant. But if you think about it, which would cost more? You know, the social giveaway programs or building a giant wall and keeping it maintained and zero immigration, put them all back into whatever country they came from? Yeah, that would be expensive. You know, from the right, and from the left, you know, it's the social programs. But as you pull away from that extreme, right, the difference in cost really expands. And EVs are a great example of that. Instead of being consumer driven, aka we the people, remember us, we the people, we decide that we want to go electric. So the demand for electric vehicles grows, and the demand for chargers grow, and private enterprise gets into the charger business, which I'm sure they are, but they're being propped up by government grants and government handouts, much like solar. I mean, EVs are giving like $7,000 in tax credits. That's money. We're going to get to it a little later, but Biden giving away free college education. So I see the cost between conservative and liberal as being vast. And California is the great example of that. And when people are forced out of the state, companies and tax revenues, it's cheaper to set up your residency in a different state and rent here in California. You could rent a house in Beverly Hills as long as you're paying taxes in Texas. It's cheaper just to do it that way. And when you decrease all of that revenue, but you continue all of your wild spending, the hell do you think is going to happen? And the worst part is, when they're closing libraries, when the DMV is only open 3 days a week, when other services are cut back, they're still going to be cutting checks to people who are doing nothing to contribute to society. And because we have become a mecca in California for drug users, homeless drifters, right? And illegal immigration, that cost is going to remain, but the revenue's not there anymore. And that's what California's done. And for Gavin to be so unaware of it is, they don't care. It's not their money, right? Speaking of not their money, right now we have a Senate race here in California. And Schiff is leading it. Adam Schiff is going to be a senator. They're just rewarding this guy. Whatever. We're not going to get into that. But what's interesting is that he's spending, because he has the most money in the contest, he's spending money to prop up Steve Garvey because he would rather run against a conservative in the actual election than a fellow Democrat. And the fellow Democrat that's close to him in the polls, Porter, is propping up Eric Early, another conservative in the race, because she would rather face Early than Schiff. But it could end up being Schiff versus Porter. And I was listening to John Phillips on 790, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he was asked a question: if it's Schiff or Porter, what are Republicans going to do? Conservatives, what are they going to do? Well, his advice was, and I am paraphrasing here, vote for Porter because the Democrats hate her. She's taking shots at Pelosi. She wants to end senators and members of Congress from owning stocks and being able to manipulate the stock market like Pelosi does. So Pelosi, of course, wants Schiff. And then there's also Barbara Lee, the lady who wants $50 to be the minimum wage. She's in the race too, but nobody's spending money on her, including herself. I don't know what she's doing there. Grassroots, all that kind of stuff. Whatever. But the idea that we may have to vote for Katie Porter just to piss off the Democrats really kind of excites me a little bit. Certainly make things a little more interesting. I wish it'd be Steve Garvey. Despite the claims, he's not really an ultra-conservative. But they're spending money to help their rivals. It's amazing. Here's another weird turn of events. Michigan Arab American and Muslim leaders urging community to vote against Joe Biden in primary. Now, I guess in the primary it doesn't really matter as much because he's sort of running unopposed, I guess you could say. Dean Phillips is running against him, I guess in theory, but we'll get more on him later. He's interesting too. But the reason they're against Biden is because he supports Israel. Why are these people if they hate Israel, they're probably somewhat hating America. So what are they doing here? Are conditions back in their home country so shitty that they'd rather live here with the enemy? Or are they just a bunch of fucking hypocrites? Because I think they're hypocrites. We see it in Israel. We see Arabs living peacefully in Israel. For the most part, Arabs live peacefully here. I'm not saying that's perfect, but come on. Just a quick funny break here. This Google will not generate an image of a Caucasian male. No matter how much you beg. Yeah, I could see wokeness in software. That's funny. But, this is one of those cases of computers are still a little bit stupid. They don't necessarily, if they look up a picture of a pope, they don't necessarily make the connection that the pope has to be a male and more than likely going to be white, although that doesn't, I guess, really factor into it. But I don't think there's been any black popes, and there certainly are not any lady popes. But, I don't make too much out of this. I just find this funny. I like this one, actually. That looks like Daniel Day Kim, I guess, and Morgan Freeman, which is kind of odd. I saw something, I think it was on Babylon Bee, where people are going to start using these AI generators to come up with their next movie script. But I think it's funny because, again, I like the fact that they got the Washington pose right, but the other one, I don't even understand what they're doing with that headdress there. That one's fucking awesome, though. Apparently, they can't. You're not really supposed to specify. You're not really supposed to specify skin color because that's biased content. But it is funny to me that you have this computer software out there that promotes diversity and it just ignores an entire race. That is beautiful. That is so the sign of our times. So earlier I mentioned, Biden, the cost of these liberals. Biden brags Supreme Court didn't stop him from canceling student loans. He's happy to break the law. See, this one really hits home in many different ways for me. As somebody who had college debt and paid it off, I can certainly say, hey, what about me? I paid mine off. But a lot of this is paying off. And you know what? I'm going to let Babylon Bee kind of explain it. Gender studies grad writes, thank you in latte for plumber who paid for her student loans. What they're really talking about here is that gender studies, not specifically gender studies, but frivolous college degrees. Even with a specific college degree or trade school diploma, you're not guaranteed a really good job. Okay? You're not, first of all. But when you take something worthless, and I'm not saying the study of gender is worthless, but what does that really prepare you to do? It's a very narrow lane with a lot of people trying to go into it. It's like trying to become a musician, or like myself, trying to become a YouTuber. I'm up against all kinds of people. I'm up against people with better credibility, better resources. I don't have a team. I don't even have a single person who helps me with this. If I have problems, I wrote my daughter into helping me, but that's only on the tech side. But when you try to go into that narrow lane, or, instead of gender studies, like if you went and got a degree in, ancient literature, what does that prepare you to do? Now, it's a college degree that will get you in the door, but it's not specific. It's not specific, and it's not broad enough. And what I mean by that is, if you were to go down the route of like some of the computer things, even computer-assisted drafting, you could branch off and do many different things from that. You've learned how to do those things. These are your interests. These are the skills that you have probably taught yourself for most of your life. If my daughter goes into computers, she's been doing it forever. She builds computers, she builds keyboards. So if she goes into something in the tech sector, it makes sense. But English literature, gender studies, these general degrees, they don't work. And we need to focus on people who have not put themselves in that position. For a little while, at least. You need to put your efforts into fixing the problems that we have in our society with things like infrastructure. That's where, and I know he sent money there, but we have a giant deficit, which fucks things up. We have credit card debt. I have credit card debt. I ran up credit card debt getting started in the field that I work in now, getting into doing fire alarms. I ran into somebody who was restarting their company, but I had to spend a lot of money to get going because they didn't have money to pay me. Worked out pretty good for me. I'm not complaining about that. But this is just a sickening buying of votes, and he was told he wasn't supposed to do it. So he used executive actions. Now, if the media came down on him the same way they would come down on Trump for doing the same thing, I probably wouldn't complain because somebody else would be pointing that out to the general public. I don't know, But he's more than willing, like he says here, tens of millions of people in debt were literally about to be canceled in debt. But my MAGA Republican, see, again, MAGA, the Supreme Court blocked it, but that didn't stop me. There you go. Step one of a fascist government. I'm not going to listen to, or I'm not going to abide by the people who are put there to make sure that I abide by the Constitution and the law and the common sense of America. So when somebody runs their mouth about what Trump did or blah, 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 this is what Biden's doing. And this is billions. This particular round is 1.3 billion. I like this part about it. How he announced the savings on valuable education. Now, see, if those words actually meant what they were supposed to mean, I would get it. Valuable in education. Okay. Like people who went through like nursing or doctors or, some of the stuff that we need for our infrastructure. People with those degrees that are struggling. Valuable. I don't think English literature and general ed and theater arts and gender studies is valuable. I don't think it is. I think it's just a fucking diploma. Arizona DA says she won't extradite alleged Soho hotel killer to New York. So apparently this guy, Al Mansouri, made statements while in custody in Arizona linking himself to a string of assaults on women, including stabbings in Surprise, Arizona, and Phoenix, and that he is connected to this murder in New York City. So Manhattan wanted to go scoop him up, and Rachel Mitchell, the Maricopa County attorney, said, no, we're going to keep him here because he'll face a mandatory prison sentence. And she went on to criticize Bragg even more, saying it's safer to keep him here. Yeah. People in the comment section, which I always love, said, let Arizona pay for the whole thing. New York gets away with scot-free. But the real comment that made sense was when they're done with him in Arizona, he could go to New York and be tried for murder. There's no statute of limitations in New York. This doesn't really need to be political. What this really is pointing out is that you have stupid laws in New York. That's it. I mean, right in that same article, right there, suspect in killings of Minnesota's first responders had been banned for life for possessing firearms. There you go. See, that law doesn't work. That's not the way you stop it. You stop gun crime by mandatory sentences. That's what they do in Arizona. This guy will probably serve more times for the assault and the stabbings in Arizona than he would for murder in New York. And in New York, there is a likelihood that they would figure out a way to let him go, at least until his trial, and he would vanish. And that's the stupidity that comes out of them. So, I don't know if everybody's heard, but at the University of Georgia, young woman was out jogging, and they found her beaten to death. And it turns out it's a non-citizen. That's a fancy way of saying it, isn't it? Non-citizen. Lakeland Riley was found out on it says intramural fields. And they quickly caught on to the killer because they had surveillance, all that kind of stuff. But it's a guy from Venezuela. Last week we were talking about, here's their solution, New York mayor warns migrants if they keep attacking NYPD officers, they'll be downgraded to 4-star hotels. That's what's going on. We have an unprecedented, as far as I can see, level of crime and stuff like that happening with illegal immigrants like we haven't had in a long time. We've had isolated events here and there, but it's nonstop. It's nonstop. And why? Because so many have come. If even 10% of that is straight up criminals. 7.2 million illegals enter the U.S. under Biden administration, an amount greater than the population of 36 states. This is a plan to buy votes, but it is also a plan to further their agenda of just creating so much chaos that we don't see what they're doing. We beg them to solve these problems. We rely on the government to solve these problems. But they're using it as a distraction. And it is possible that this right-wing theory of replacement is actually happening. More people in 3 years than 36 states. Here's puts it in perspective. In 62 years of immigration through Ellis Island, a little over 12 million. Biden, in 3 short years, 7.298 million. 62 years versus 3 years. What the hell's going on here? Well, the thing that I've noticed is that we've taken in an influx of young, fighting age, as they say, fighting age, males from around the world. But from Venezuela, we have gotten a new gang. The gang that is going around targeting people who are using cell phones. People with links to basically a drug lord running a country, Maduro. Could he be emptying his prisons like Castro did in the 80s? If you've never seen it, watch Scarface with Al Pacino. Say hello to my little friend. That started because Castro took his criminals and essentially put them on rafts and shoved them out into the water towards the United States. We are getting a lot of men from around the world, but primarily Venezuela seems to be the hotbed right now. Not only are they fighting age, but they're also the age of gang involvement in prison. He could just be emptying his prisons right into the United States. And we're not even trying to stop it. We already saw what happened when Castro did it. Now Maduro's doing it. I don't know. But Biden will go down in history as the worst president ever. Because the effects of his administration will be felt for years to come. Even if Trump was to win a landslide election, we already have nearly 8 million people unaccounted for in this country. And when you came through Ellis Island or under other immigration areas now, background check, you got to pay for lawyers, you got to have medical exams, you got to have proof that you don't have tuberculosis. These people are just entering the country with no checks, no balances. Given a court date 3 years down the line to then explain why they entered our country illegally. They're just going to disappear. They're going to meld into the background. And the worst part about it is, and this is the part that should offend the people on the left, these people will be exploited. They will be taken advantage of. Or they will just be criminals or become criminals. And that's not going to make any of our situations better here. Taking in the population of 36 states is not a way to get our deficit under control or to fix the problems that we need to fix. Where's all the money going to come from? I'll tell you why. Where? Our kids and our grandkids. Babylon B here. Trans basketball player achieves rare triple double with 36 points, 14 rebounds, and 11 concussions. Yeah. Team forfeits after girls basketball player allegedly hurt in play with male who identifies as female. The problem I have with this, and the only reason I'm bringing it up, because I'm sick of it. It needs to work itself out. But the problem is, this person identifies as female but has facial hair. Where is any explanation of why this person can't play on the boys' team, which is where she belongs? I'm sorry, but it's hard when they have facial hair to believe that that's who they are. I'm not saying people have to conform. They have to fit right in this box for us to accept it, but it does make it somewhat suspicious. If you could just self-identify and show up even in a beard and play, that's violating women's rights. You ever notice how easy it is in this country to just violate women's rights? The right takes away abortion. No exception. If you're raped, you're keeping the baby. Brutal. But then over on the left, you have stuff like this. The team that quit made the playoffs, and three of them were injured by the taller, bulkier transgender player. Right there. And of course, the officials, they don't want to talk about, protection, HIPAA, all this crap. I know it's not HIPAA, but that's kind of a catch-all for all of these things that people could hide behind. 3 players were injured. A fourth one went down, and the rest of the team was needed for the playoffs, basically. So they forfeited the game. I'm not saying they already had played against this team before, but I bring it up because it really illustrates the fact that they're just shitting on women's rights. These are girls whose opportunities are being stunted. When one person has an advantage, they're going to feed them the ball. And nobody can say anything. That's the part of this that really irritates me the most. Nobody can speak up. When the girls do try to speak up, they're silenced. How is this inclusive? How is it inclusive to allow this one person all of these rights, meanwhile taking away the rights and the opportunities of the other girls? They're not allowed to speak out. They will be punished for it. Okay? Yeah, if you thought that last story was kind of insane, this one is just unbelievable. This guy, the New Republic, there's only one viable alternative to Biden. I mean, and this guy admits it right here. His approval rating hovers at a dismal 40%. His age is becoming impossible to ignore. I love how he put this. Thanks to his verbal slips in the withering her report. No, buddy. We already knew this dude was over the hill. We already knew it, okay? We all recognized it. He's taking a beating in Michigan. We talked about that earlier because he supports Israel. And so is it Gavin Newsom? No. It's Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris slept her way into politics. She basically floated her way through a bunch of other political jobs and ended up being the vice president because she checked 2 really good boxes. Black woman. Boom. That was her qualifications. And remain her only qualifications. Okay? I mean, look, I could only base what I think about Kamala Harris on the words that come out of her mouth and the way she says things. She's an idiot. I would rather have Biden than Kamala Harris. But that's what that's what some people on the left think. Madness. 'Tis but a scratch This is the night sketch from Monty Python. You should look it up. It's pretty funny. That's why I included it here. I get it. People have their, people have their complaints about Nikki Haley, globalism, all of this stuff. Look, at the end of the day, conservatives have started a civil war within their own party, okay? MAGA, whatever, however you want to say it. The rhinos, the never Trumpers. I mean, okay. Y'all got to pull it back together, because if you don't, you're going to lose, and the country's really going to lose. Earlier, I mentioned a guy named Dean Phillips. He's running against Biden as president. And he was on, they mentioned on a radio, John Phillips show, they mentioned how Dean Phillips is proposing a unity ticket with Nikki Haley on top and himself as the vice president underneath her. Oh, insert innuendo. But it's kind of genius. A Republican on top, a Democrat as VP. That's the kind of shit that I support. I get it. We're never going to find a perfect candidate, okay? But we need somebody to stand up against the craziness. We need somebody to refocus this country on what's important. And we need to focus on this country being a group of Americans, not all of these little splinter cells who fight amongst each other while the politicians just take and take and take. This should be the year that we overturn the Apple cart. And that's the kind of thing that would overturn it. A Republican on top, a Democrat on the bottom, vice versa. The idea of trying to find things again that pass along bipartisan lines. And not bipartisan because you're buying and paying off members of the opposition, but because the ideas are so good, nobody can say no. Right now, we are living in some really dark times when it comes to what our government is doing to us. They are imposing agendas on us. Our government does not need to be spending money on electric car chargers. That should be up to private industry to react to market forces. This country needs to be in the middle, so they're doing everything in their power, from NBC Nightly News to TikTok, to make sure that we are way far apart so we don't ever talk. And they're certainly stoking the race and the cultural war to keep us at those opposite ends. 4 years ago, I started this. I wanted to make the world purple. Now we have to make it purple. Because if we don't, the consequences are going to be dire. We have barely even scratched the surface of what all of this fucking political nonsense is going to cost us. Our children should not have to be exposed to all of this negativity, looking forward to a bleak future. They should see good things on the horizon. Maybe that's naive, but that should be the ideal we strive for. Don't you think? Huh? I don't know. Anyhow, I love you all. Thank you for watching. I'm Kid Copious, Purple State Party. So are you. Love one another. Drink plenty of fluids. Don't be stupid. Vote with your head, not your heart. And I'll see you in the next one. And always remember, when the chips are down, dance it out.